Elon Musk follows an employee working double shifts who requested food to be delivered to her home. What he discovered there left him astonished. The October breeze rustled through the Tesla factory's parking lot as Elon Musk emerged from his morning meeting. The clock had just struck 7 a.m., and already the facility was buzzing with activity. He paused, observing employees pouring through the entrance, each face revealing its own narrative. "Good morning, Mr. Musk," a young security guard greeted, his badge identifying him as Tommy. "How's the new baby sleeping?" Elon inquired, recalling their brief conversation from last week. Tommy's weary smile spoke volumes. 3 hours at a time, sir, but worth every moment. These morning exchanges had grown increasingly significant to Elon. After years of being depicted as the calculating tech mogul, he had intentionally sought to connect with his people more, not for publicity. The media wasn't present for these early morning chats, but because something had been bothering him recently. Inside his office, his assistant Sarah was already prepared with his agenda. "The board wants to discuss the new production goals," she started. But Elon raised his hand. "Before that, show me the employee satisfaction reports from last month." Sarah blinked. "The summary or the complete data?" Quote, "Complete data, all of it." Quote. She brought up the files on his large screen. "Any specific reason?" Elon leaned back in his chair, his eyes scanning the figures. "Something feels off. I can't quite pinpoint it." Quote. The morning flowed into afternoon as meetings blurred together. Production targets, supply chain management, investor calls, the usual routine of managing a groundbreaking company. But between each session, Elon found himself observing his employees through the glass walls of his office. "Sir," his head of HR, James Patterson, caught his attention during the lunch break. "Is everything okay? You seem preoccupied." Elon gestured to the busy cafeteria below. Skiff. "How well do we truly know them, James? Our employees. We conduct regular surveys, carry out performance evaluations." "No," Elon interrupted. "I mean truly know them. What their lives are like when they clock out." Quote. James adjusted his tie awkwardly. "With all due respect, sir, that's not typically within our scope." "Maybe it should be." Elon turned from the window. "Establish a new communication system. I want to monitor employee forums, messages, internal communications." "Sir, that could be perceived as intrusive." "Not to spy," Elon clarified. "To comprehend. Set up alerts for keywords related to well-being, hardship, anything that might indicate someone needs assistance. And I want direct access to the feed." "That's unusual for a CEO of your stature." "When have I ever cared about being conventional?" James nodded. The system went live that afternoon. As Elon sat through the board meeting, his phone quietly gathered data. Learning patterns, analyzing discussions. Most messages were trivial. Complaints about the coffee machine, conversations about project deadlines, jokes about his latest tweets. Evening arrived, and the factory's rhythm shifted. The day shift headed home while the night crew took their positions. Elon remained, something keeping him in his office even as his schedule cleared. At 9:47 p.m., his phone buzzed. Initially, he ignored it, focusing on reviewing designs for the latest Model S upgrade. It buzzed again and again. "For goodness sake," he muttered, finally picking it up. The new monitoring system had flagged something. Multiple alerts, in fact, all centered on a single message in the employee forum. Quote, "Does anyone have any leftover food from the cafe? I can work an extra hour in exchange." The timestamp indicated it had been posted just moments ago by an employee named Maria Torres. Something about the message made him pause. The desperation carefully concealed behind professional language. The offer to trade time for food. "Computer, pull up employee file Maria Torres." His screen filled with information. Engineering department, level 3. Hired 18 months ago. Perfect attendance record. Multiple commendations from supervisors. And then he saw her time logs. "This can't be accurate," he muttered, scrolling through the data. "Sarah," he called out, knowing his assistant was still at her desk. She appeared in the doorway. "Yes, sir?" "Are these time logs for Maria Torres correct?" Quote. Sarah checked her tablet. "Yes, sir. She's been working double shifts for, looks like just over 3 months now." Double shifts every day? According to the logs, yes. 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. with minimal breaks. Elon leaned back, his mind racing. Pull up her project assignments. More screens of data appeared. Maria's work was outstanding. Innovative solutions to complex engineering challenges, consistently ahead of schedule despite the difficulty. And her pay rate? Standard for her level, sir. In fact, she was due for a raise review last month but didn't attend the meeting. Her supervisor noted she requested to postpone it. Quote, Elon frowned. An engineer working 16-hour days, producing exceptional work, asking for food in exchange for even more hours? And she'd passed up a chance for a raise? Show me the security feeds for her workstation. The cameras revealed a young woman hunched over her computer, her dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Even through the grainy footage, her fatigue was clear. As he watched, she rubbed her eyes, checked her phone, then quickly returned to her work. Sir. Sarah's voice was tentative. Should I forward this to HR? Elon kept watching the screen. Maria had just picked up her empty coffee cup, stared into it sadly, then set it back down. No, he said finally. This one's different. This one, I need to understand myself. Quote, He pulled up the employee forum again. No one had responded to Maria's message yet. The night shift crew was smaller. Most of the cafeteria staff long gone. His cursor blinked in the reply box. He could respond himself. Order food delivered to her desk. But something told him this wasn't about a single meal. Are fine. Sarah, what's her current location? A few keystrokes brought up a map of the building. Section E, workstation 247. She's been there since her second shift started at 7 p.m. Elon stood up, straightening his jacket. Cancel my morning meetings tomorrow. All of them. But the investors? All of them. He headed for the door, then paused. And Sarah, pull up everything you can find about Maria Torres, not just her employee file. Social media, public records, everything. Of course, sir. But what exactly are we searching for? Elon watched the security feed one more time. Maria had pulled a small photo from her desk drawer, looked at it for a long moment, then quickly put it away as a supervisor walked past. The truth, he said simply. We're looking for the truth. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Maria in the forum. Quote, Never mind about the food. I'm fine. Sorry to bother everyone. Quote. The message only strengthened his resolve. Something was very wrong. And he was going to find out what. Sir, Sarah called after him. What are you going to do? Elon checked his watch. 10:13 p.m. First, I'm going to wait. Then, I'm going to follow her home. Quote, Is that wise? Quote. He thought about the mysterious photo, the double shifts, the desperate message about food. Probably not, but it's necessary. Hey! As he settled back into his chair to wait, his mind raced with possibilities. In all his years running Tesla, through all the challenges and triumphs, something about this situation felt different. Perhaps it was the way Maria had withdrawn her request, the quiet dignity in her attempt to hide her need. Or maybe it was the nagging sense that she represented something larger, a blind spot in his vision of a revolutionary company. The next few hours crawled by. Elon busied himself with work, but his eyes kept drifting to the security feed showing Maria's workstation. She barely moved, totally focused on her tasks, despite what must have been gnawing hunger. At 10:45 p.m., his phone lit up with the information Sarah had gathered. He began reading, and with each detail, the mystery deepened. Maria's social media presence had virtually disappeared 3 months ago, the exact time her double shifts began. Her public records showed a recent change of address from a decent apartment complex to a much less desirable area, and most intriguingly, there were regular payments to a medical facility he didn't recognize. The pieces were there, but they didn't quite fit together. Not yet. Finally, at 11:23 p.m., movement on the security feed caught his attention. Maria was packing up her workstation, carefully organizing her papers, and powering down her computer. Even after a 16-hour day, she took the time to leave everything in perfect order. Elon stood, grabbing his coat. Dave, he spoke into his phone. Bring the car around. And Dave, let's keep this between us. As he walked through the nearly empty building toward the parking lot, he felt the weight of what he was about to do. Following an employee home wasn't just unusual. It was potentially inappropriate, maybe even illegal. But as he watched Maria's exhausted figure push through the exit doors ahead of him, he knew he had to understand. The final piece of information from Sarah's research flashed in his mind. Maria had recently filed for medical bankruptcy the same week her double shifts began. Sometimes, he muttered to himself as he slipped into his waiting car, you have to break the rules to fix the system. He had no idea just how true those words would prove to be. Dave? His longtime driver didn't ask questions when Elon instructed him to maintain a discreet distance from Maria's fading blue Toyota. That's why Elon had chosen him for tonight. Dave understood the value of silence as they followed Maria's car through the dimming streets of Fremont. Elon's phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. Found something else. Maria's mother's name is Elena Torres. Was a nurse for 30 years at Valley Medical. Retired last year due to health issues. That's all I could find. The pieces were starting to fit together, but the picture they formed made his chest tight. He watched as Maria's car signaled right, turning into a gas station. Through the windshield, he could see her counting out coins at the pump. Pull over here, Elon instructed Dave. Keep the engine running. They watched as Maria managed to put just enough gas in her tank to presumably get home. When she went into the station to pay, Elon noticed she lingered by the food aisle, staring at the sandwiches before walking away empty-handed. Sir, Dave spoke for the first time, watching through the rearview mirror. I know it's not my place, but I've seen that look before. My sister had it years ago, when she was choosing between feeding her kids and paying the electric bill. Elon leaned forward. What happened to your sister? Dave's eyes met his in the mirror. Someone helped her, changed her life. That's why I've been driving for you for 7 years, mister. Because I believe you're the kind of person who helps when he sees something wrong. Before Elon could respond, Maria's car pulled out of the gas station. They resumed their careful pursuit through streets that grew progressively darker and less maintained. Every few blocks, another streetlight was burnt out, creating pools of shadow. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Sarah. Medical facility payments traced to Innovative Care Solutions. They specialize in experimental cancer treatments. Most insurance companies won't cover their procedures. Elon's fist clenched. He knew about places like that. Cutting-edge treatments that could save lives, but were deemed too experimental by insurance companies. He'd actually considered buying one such facility last year, but his board had talked him out of it, citing liability concerns. Maria's car finally turned into a parking lot of what had once been an apartment complex, but now looked more like a last resort. The sign reading Sunshine Gardens hung crooked, missing several letters. Dave, wait here, Elon said, opening his door. Sir, this neighborhood. People living in it who deserve better. Elon straightened his jacket. That's all I need to know. He watched from the shadows as Maria gathered her things from her car. A stack of engineering drawings, a small laptop bag, what looked like a bag of medical supplies. She moved slowly now, the weight of her 16-hour day evident in every step. As she climbed the exterior stairs to the 3rd floor, Elon could see her pause several times, leaning against the railing. His hand twitched, fighting the urge to help her carry her burden. On the 3rd floor landing, Maria fumbled with her keys, dropping them with a quiet curse. When she bent to pick them up, a few papers slipped from her stack, scattering in the light breeze. One of them drifted toward Elon. He caught it before it could blow away completely, and what he saw made his breath catch. It wasn't an engineering drawing, it was a medical bill. The amount made his eyes widen. $147,892.43. And it was marked past due, final notice. The sound of a door opening drew his attention back to the 3rd floor. Maria had disappeared into her apartment, leaving Elon alone in the parking lot, holding a piece of paper that explained everything and nothing. He took the stairs slowly, his mind racing. The amount on the bill was more than Maria's annual salary. Even working double shifts, even living in this place, even driving a car that was probably older than some of his youngest employees. At apartment 312, he paused. Through the thin walls, he could hear movement inside. A television playing softly, the whir of medical equipment, a weak cough that didn't sound right. And then, Very quietly, he heard Maria's voice. "I'm sorry, Mama. The cafeteria was closed by the time I could take a break. But I'll make you something now." An older voice, fragile but determined. "Maria, you need to eat too," in his chef. "I had a big lunch," Maria lied, and Elon felt something twist in his chest. He'd seen her message on the employee forum begging for leftover food. He'd thought he'd understood then, but now. "The treatment is working, though," Maria added quickly, as if afraid he'd judge their choices. "Show him your hands, Mama." "No, show him." Reluctantly, Maria held out her hands. In the harsh apartment lighting, Elon could see they were red and raw. "She cleans offices on her lunch break," Elena explained, her voice tight with emotion, because even 16 hours at Tesla wasn't enough. Elon felt something in his chest constrict. "Maria, your salary goes entirely to the treatments," she finished. "The cleaning jobs pay for food and rent most days anyway." A memory flashed in Elon's mind. Maria's message on the employee forum asking for leftover food. He'd thought he'd understood then, but now. "The treatment is working, though," Maria added quickly, as if afraid he'd judge their choices. "Show him your latest numbers." "Mama!" Elena handed over another paper. Medical charts showing a clear downward trend in several markers. "The doctor says if we can continue for another 6 months. Maria's voice cracked slightly. "6 more months of killing yourself," Elena cut in. "No, I won't have it. Better to let nature take its course than watch my daughter destroy herself." "Mama. Mama, we've talked about this." "No, you've talked. I've watched you grow thinner, more exhausted, watched you skip meals, work impossible hours. This isn't living, mija." "But you're getting better!" "At what cost?" The argument had the feel of one they'd had many times before. Elon watched as Maria rubbed her temples, a gesture he'd seen on the security cameras earlier that night. "When was the last time you slept more than 4 hours?" he asked her. Maria blinked, caught off guard by the question. I'm not sure. Last weekend, maybe? And eaten a full meal? She looked away. "I have protein bars at my desk." "Had a day off?" The treatments don't take days off," she said quietly. Elena reached for her daughter's hand. "Tell them about the promotion you turned down." "What promotion?" Elon asked sharply. Maria shifted uncomfortably. 3 weeks ago. Team lead position. But it would have meant training sessions during my second shift hours. "So you declined? A better position? Better pay? Because it would have interfered with working yourself to exhaustion?" Elena finished. "I had no choice." "There are always choices, mija. Even impossible ones." "Like what? Letting you die?" Maria stood abruptly, pacing the small room. "Watch the cancer win because we can't afford the one treatment that's actually working? Is that the choice you want me to make?" The machines beeped again, and Maria moved automatically to check them, her movements precise despite her obvious exhaustion. "Mr. Musk," Elena said while her daughter was distracted, "do you know what the hardest part of being a nurse was?" "What?" "Watching people choose between their health and their financial survival. Seeing families torn apart not by disease, but by the cost of fighting it." She gestured around the apartment. "I spent 30 years helping people through their worst moments, and now I'm watching my own daughter face the same impossible choices I saw destroy so many others." Maria returned to her seat, but her hands were shaking slightly. Elon noticed she hadn't eaten more than a few bites of her food. "The doctor says her body is responding to the treatment better. Better than anyone expected," she said almost to herself. "Just 6 more months. I can handle anything for 6 months." "Can you?" Elon asked gently. "Because from where I'm sitting, you're already handling more than anyone should have to." "I don't have a choice," she repeated, but her voice was smaller now. "Everyone has a choice," Elon said, standing up. "And it's time I made mine." Both women looked at him, confusion clear on their faces. "Mr. Musk?" Maria asked hesitantly. He pulled out his phone, checking the time. 1:47 a.m. "It's too late to call the board now, but first thing tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow morning what?" The board? Maria's eyes widened. Sir, please, if this is about the double shifts, I know it's against policy, but this isn't about policy, he cut in. This is about doing what's right. Not just for you, but for every employee who might be facing something similar. I don't understand. Elon looked around the apartment again, at the medical equipment that meant life or death, at the stack of bills representing an impossible choice, at the mother and daughter who'd sacrificed everything to buy a few more months together. When I started Tesla, he said slowly, I had a vision of changing the world. Electric cars, sustainable energy, revolutionizing how we think about transportation and power. But what good is revolutionizing the future if we're not taking care of the people building it? He turned to Elena. How much does the treatment cost? Total cost, everything included. She named a figure that would have bought several Model S plaids. Elon nodded, making notes on his phone. And the doctor says 6 more months? That's the current estimate, Maria confirmed. But sir, why? Because tomorrow morning, I'm calling an emergency board meeting, and we're going to revolutionize something else. How we take care of our people. Sir, Maria stood, her professional mask slipping back into place. I appreciate the concern, but I can handle. Maria. He cut in gently. When was the last time you let someone else handle anything? The question seemed to catch her off guard. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. Exactly, Elena said softly. My daughter, always carrying the world on her shoulders. Not anymore, Elon said firmly. Starting tomorrow, things change. Not just for you, but for every Tesla employee who might be one medical emergency away from impossible choices. How? Maria asked. And for the first time that night, Elon heard something like hope in her voice. First, we're going to take care of your mother's treatment. All of it. Quote, But the cost is less than what we spend on office coffee in a month. He held up a hand to stop her protest. Then, we're going to revamp our entire healthcare policy. No more gaps. No more experimental treatment exclusions. If a treatment is showing results, it's covered. The board will never. The board works for me, not the other way around. His voice took on the tone that had launched rockets and revolutionized the automotive industry. And once we've done that, we're going to look at every other policy that might be forcing our people to choose between their families and their jobs. Elena was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. You sound angry, Mr. Musk. I am angry, he admitted. Angry that one of my best engineers is cleaning offices on her lunch break. Angry that a woman who spent 30 years caring for others can't get the care she needs. Angry that it took following you home to see what was happening right under my nose. Maria sank back into her chair, tears finally spilling over. I never wanted anyone to know, never wanted to be a burden. You're not a burden, Mia, Elena said fiercely. You're my daughter, and you've carried this alone for too long. Elon watched as Maria finally broke down, months of exhaustion and worry pouring out as her mother held her hand. In that moment, he made another decision. Take tomorrow off, he said quietly. Maria's head snapped up. But my projects, they'll still be there the next day. Take the week, actually. Paid leave retroactive for all the overtime you never claimed. I can't. Yes, you can, because while you're resting, I'm going to be very busy changing things that should have been changed a long time ago. He stood, pulling out his phone to call Dave. But before he could, Elena spoke again. Mr. Musk? Yes. Thank you for following my daughter home tonight. He looked at Maria, who had finally fallen asleep in her chair, her hands still clasped in her mother's. No, he said softly. Thank you for showing me what I needed to see. As he left the apartment, his mind was already racing with plans tomorrow would bring changes. Big ones. But for now, he had given something precious to a daughter and mother who had nearly lost everything. Hope. Elon arrived at Tesla headquarters the next morning before sunrise, his mind still racing from the events of the previous night. The cleaning crew looked surprised to see him. It was barely 5 a.m. Sarah, he called, his assistant, as he strode toward his office. I need you to set up an emergency board meeting today. No exceptions. Sir, it's not even 5 a.m. Then wake 'em up. Conference room by 8 a.m. and get me all our current healthcare policy documents. Quote. He could hear her typing. Sir, did something happen? Elon paused at his office door, remembering Maria's raw hands and Elena's medical machines. Yes. Something that should have never been allowed to happen in the first place. By 7:30 a.m., his office was a war room of spreadsheets and policy documents. James from HR hovered nervously nearby. Sir, about the Torres situation. Quote, dot. How many others? Elon interrupted Eric Mitterbus. I'm sorry, how many other employees are working double shifts, living on the edge, choosing between healthcare and eating? Quote, James shifted uncomfortably. Our surveys don't typically. That's the problem, isn't it? Elon stood, gathering papers. We don't know because we don't ask. Well, that changes today. Quote, the board members filed in at 8 a.m. sharp. Their faces a mixture of concern and curiosity. Emergency meetings weren't unusual with Elon, but something about this one felt different. Gentlemen, Elon began, but then stopped. On the conference room TV, a news ticker caught his eye. Healthcare costs continue to rise. Experimental treatments remain out of reach for most Americans. He changed his approach. What's the most valuable asset Tesla has? Board members glanced at each other. Our intellectual property, one offered. Our market position, said another. Wrong. Elon tossed Maria's employee file on the table. It's our people, and we're failing them. He spent the next hour laying out everything he discovered. The impossible choices, the hidden struggles, the gaps in their supposedly comprehensive benefits. But, sir, one board member interjected, our healthcare package is industry standard. Industry standard isn't good enough anymore. Elon pulled up some calculations. Do you know what we spend on office supplies annually? More than what it would cost to cover experimental treatments for every employee who needs them? This day, the shareholders will understand that taking care of our people is the best investment we can make. His voice took on the tone that had launched rockets and revolutionized the automotive industry. And if they don't, they can find another company to invest in. Biden. The room fell silent. Mr. Musk, the head of finance, spoke carefully. What exactly are you proposing? Pissed. Elon outlined his plan. Complete healthcare coverage, including experimental treatments, retroactive payment for overtime, mental health support, childcare assistance, housing allowances for those caring for sick family members. The cost, someone started to say, is less than what we lose in productivity when our best people are stretched to breaking point. Elon pulled up another spreadsheet. I had our analysts run the numbers all morning. Even from a purely financial perspective, this makes sense. The discussion continued for hours. By early afternoon, faces that had started skeptical began to show understanding, even enthusiasm. At 2 p.m., his phone buzzed. A message from Dave, his driver. Thought you'd want to know. Dropped off groceries at the Torres apartment as requested. Elena asked me to tell you Maria finally slept for 6 hours straight. Elon smiled, then addressed the board again. We're not just making cars here. We're building the future. But that future needs to work for everyone. Not just our customers, but the people making it possible. By late afternoon, the votes were in. The new policies would take effect immediately. But Elon wasn't finished. He had one more stop to make. The sun was setting when he pulled into the Sunshine Garden parking lot again. This time, he didn't hesitate. At apartment 312, Maria opened the door, looking more rested than he'd ever seen her. Mr. Musk, is everything okay? Everything's better than okay. Huh? He handed her a folder. These are the new company policies. I want you to be the first to see them. As she read, her hands began to shake. This can't be real. It is. He gestured to where Elena sat in her medical bed, looking stronger already. Your mother's treatments are fully covered retroactive to the first day, and there's a team working on getting you both into a better apartment closer to work. But why? Maria whispered. Why do all this? Elon looked around the apartment, at the medical equipment that would soon be unnecessary, at the folding table where Maria had worked herself to exhaustion, at the mother and daughter who had shown him what real strength looked like, because sometimes it takes seeing something through new eyes to realize what needs to change. He pulled out one more document. There's something else. The promotion you turned down. It's still yours if you want it. Quote dot. Standard hours, of course. Maria looked at her mother, tears in her eyes. Elena smiled. Take it, Misha. It's time to let someone else handle things for a while. 3 months later, Elon stood at a podium addressing a room full of industry leaders and press. The headline behind him read, Tesla revolutionizes corporate healthcare, a new standard in employee care. He didn't mention Maria or Elena by name. Instead, he spoke about dignity, about how no employee should have to choose between saving a loved one and their own well-being, about how true innovation meant caring for the innovators. In the audience, Maria sat quietly, Elena beside her in a wheelchair but looking healthier than she had in months. They didn't need recognition. The changes happening around them were enough. Other companies following Tesla's lead, healthcare policy shifting across the tech industry. That evening, as Maria drove home in her new Tesla, a company benefit she could finally accept, she passed the old Sunshine Gardens apartments. The sign still hung crooked, but something was different. In the small patches of dirt around the building, someone had planted actual flowers. Sometimes, she realized, change started small, with a desperate message about food on a company forum. And sometimes, it grew into something that could transform not just one life, but thousands. At home, in their new apartment filled with sunlight and hope, Elena was waiting with a home-cooked meal. No more hospital bed, no more mountains of bills. Just a mother and daughter sharing dinner at a proper table, talking about their days like normal people. You know, Elena said, passing the salad, I saw Mr. Musk on TV today. Oh? He said something that reminded me of that night, about how real revolution isn't just about technology, it's about humanity. Maria smiled, remembering the desperate woman she'd been just a few months ago. He changed everything, didn't he? Elena reached for her daughter's hand, no longer robbed from extra cleaning jobs, now strong and sure. No, Mija, you did. He just needed to see it through your eyes. And somewhere across the city, in his Tesla office, Elon Musk was already working on the next revolution. But this time, he looked at every proposal, every policy, every decision through a different lens. Quote, would this help his people thrive, not just survive? The answer, more and more often, was yes. If you liked this video, leave a like, subscribe, and help us bring you more exciting stories involving celebrities. Here you will be updated every day on the world of celebrities. See you soon.